I'm talking here with Janet Lane. You're with the Canada West Foundation, is that correct?
Yes.
You had a fascinating speech. You dealt with a topic, very comprehensive, extensive, intensive, in 5 simple words, that competency is the best credential. I mean, was that difficult in sort of coming up with that very clever capsulization of a very complex subject?
No, it wasn't really difficult. Because after I had done the work of preparing this paper, I began to realize that the credentials that we are giving people are just an entry point, right?
Right.
But a lot of times the employers are assuming that the credential says that this person is going to be competent in this particular area, and yet employers are saying constantly that it's not happening. That they want job-ready candidates, and schools of all kinds aren't quite there yet. Partly because they're looking for skills that are not necessarily in the course of study, right? They're looking for predominantly communication skills and the capacity to critically think and make decisions that are not necessarily taught when you're doing a theoretical approach. It only comes from actually being on the job and becoming competent in that job.
And you dealt with one specific area which I found fascinating and very, again, illuminated in 2 words: skill plus knowledge. So as opposed to someone just walking into a job with a degree, and that, as you said, served as the proxy for so many years of skills. So there's much, much more to it. So is that a fair assessment?
Yes, there is so much more to it. And so what I have been saying is perhaps it's not that the universities, especially because they have not been so competency based, is what they need to do is to be thinking in terms of not what they teach, because universities have a very specific approach to what they teach, and that's what we want from them. We want them to teach people to learn and to think and to know about various things. But actually, to be able to, what they need to do is to think about how they teach, so that people are able to apply that knowledge that they're learning. So how do you use what you're learning? How does that apply in the real world, right? The outside of the academic community world, because there are people with absolutely wonderful educations that could be very useful in the workplace, but they have not yet figured out that their degree in liberal arts, in philosophy or economics or psychology, how to make that work within the everyday workplace. And writing is a big one of these competencies. So academic writing is not something we use on a daily basis. But if a student had to put what they know into a briefing note, or into an email, or into a short paper that explains something to a colleague, then it would become much more practically approached. So it would work better. So don't like, as an academic institution, don't just ask for academic writing. Ask for practical everyday writing as well.
A bit of a double-barrel question. You had mentioned in terms of the competency framework, Canada is somewhat lagging behind the United States and Europe in that. So 2 questions really. Is it a long road ahead of us? And how can a group like the Association for Prior Learning Assessment play an integral role in this process ahead of us?
I don't think it's a long road ahead of us. As we learned during the session, there are a lot of people here who are already working with competencies and have some understanding. The colleges are ahead of the universities on this approach. The trades are already starting to think about this. So the mindset is shifting, and that's half the battle, right? The big problem is having those national standards, or those standards that we are going to assess to. And we also heard that, because I was talking about competencies as a bucket of Lego, right? We know all those Lego bricks that you can put together in different ways to create different occupations. But if we don't have just one bucket of Lego, we've got 50 buckets of Lego, then we've got a problem, because we're not talking the same language, we're not building competencies in the same way, we're not even assessing them in the same way. So having a standard for each occupation or each competency would be helpful. And I think this is where the CAPLA can do such great work because their people, their members are already they've already bought into this, but they are struggling against this lack of language, common language, and a lack of standards in competency assessment.
Just one concluding thought then. You gave a rather illuminating definition and references of essential skills. How important is it for more people to understand just what are we talking about when we talk about essential skills?
Well, I think that a lot of employers are starting to hear the language now and are starting to realize that they may have thought of them as soft skills, and we sometimes still call them that, but they're actually vital and crucial, right? And so once employers and I think a lot of them have begun to understand that without those communication skills, those thinking and decision-making skills, their workforce is not as productive as they need to be. And if we increase those essential skills, we'll actually increase productivity. So I think employers are beginning to get that. And that, but we always can do more about getting the word out. And we need to be making sure that our high school graduates have those essential skills. That is, at the very least, I mean, school is all about creating citizens, and I get that. I love that because it's not just, we don't want to be creating workers for the economy. We want to be creating citizens. But those essential skills, those competencies are essential for living and learning as well as working. So I think, we need to be increasing the understanding of those essential skills and how to gain them. Still a long way, but I think with employers starting to understand it now, they will drive that.
Well, thank you so much for taking part, and a very, very interesting talk.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.